Hello, welcome to our OWHE webinar for May. We're here with Kara. We're going to wait just about a minute to see if more attendees are here. It looks like a few of you are already logged in. So welcome. We're going to have webinars once a month. They're always during lunch hour, so you are welcome to join us when you have a chance, and it really helps us get ready for the conference next January. So with that, looks like a couple more people came in. That's good. And I am going to turn it over to Carrie Weichel-Delaplane.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and get the screen share started so you can stop seeing me and start seeing the presentation. So here we go. One moment. Okay, so welcome. Can you see me still or just the presentation? Okay, I'm going to roll here.
Presentation, yeah.
Okay, all right, perfect. So welcome, everyone. Again, I'm Carrie Weichel-Delaplane, and today we're going to be talking about how to make our campuses more welcoming. So the flow of the webinar, I'll do a quick introduction of who I am, and then talk about what is welcoming, who are our students, where does this movement begin, tools that you can use, resources, sources cited, and then time for questions and answers. So just a tiny bit about me. Again, my name's Carrie Weichel-Delaplane. I'm the Associate Dean of Students at Portland Community College at the Sylvania campus. We're in Portland, Oregon, and Sylvania campus is one of our 4 main campuses in Southwest Portland. And in my role as Associate Dean, I support 6 student-facing areas here at our campus with about 30,000 students attending our campus. I've worked in higher ed in a number of different student affairs, student services roles for about 19 years. And I'm currently pursuing my EDD at Oregon State University in the Community College Leadership Program. Enough about me. So what do we mean when we say welcoming? And as I was preparing for this webinar, it occurred to me that there were so many directions that I could possibly take this webinar in. And for a short amount of time today, I really wanted to focus on OWHE's social justice definition and use that to frame this conversation today. The first bullet point there that I had listed, inclusive regardless of individual differences, beliefs, or identities, that's actually something I came up with when I was thinking about how I wanted to frame today. But I also really wanted to share this definition of social justice from OWHE. Full and equal participation of all groups in a society that's mutually shaped to meet their needs, moves beyond awareness and tolerance toward appreciation and action, moves beyond conversations about the other, and focuses on how our identities are windows into understanding, oppression and change, and outcome in equity and inclusion. So that's how I'm framing what I mean when I say a welcoming campus. This is a slide that I included. I am hot on the heels of just returning home from the AACC conference in New Orleans, Louisiana. That was at the end of April, and the unofficial conference theme, if you will, it was unofficial. They didn't actually declare it officially the theme, but really the opening session, so much of the conversation at the conference, of the American Association of Community Colleges conference, was around guided pathways. And something happened for me at that conference. We were at the Sunday morning opening panel where there were a number of experts there talking about their implementation of, at different stages, their implementations of guided pathways at their respective institutions. And guided pathways, that could be a whole other webinar, but it's a reorganization movement. That's how I would describe it, of how we deliver services and our academic programming to students at the community college. And one of the schools that has been a pioneer in that work is actually a 4-year institution, Georgia State University. And I've got up here a bar chart that shows they've implemented guided pathways at Georgia State. And you'll see here the change in their graduation rates by race and ethnicity. So let's see, the blue bar is 10 years ago, and the red bar indicates today, or I want to say maybe last spring, perhaps, but you'll see the dramatic difference. What's happening right now, from my vantage point, is that, for a while, the messaging, the narrative was like, we know we need to do something different. We don't have data to prove that these things, they're best practices, but we don't have data to prove that these things work. And what's happening now is this guided pathways model is really gaining traction because it's a good thing to do. At least I think so. But also because now we're starting to get numbers to back up the fact that when you provide more intentional, intrusive, and ongoing support for students of color, first-generation students, that the rates of success are incredible. And you see here, again, from Georgia State, the numbers since they've implemented the guided pathways movement at their school, it's pretty dramatic. And so something happened there when I think it was the president of the Miami-Dade Community College. He said, somebody asked him, they're implementing guided pathways at Miami-Dade, and somebody asked him at this panel, like, what do you say to people when or faculty or staff, when they push back on this movement? And he said, I tell them it's a social justice issue. And me, where I'm at, I hadn't, it's my naivete, my ignorance, I'm not sure, but I hadn't thought of it. I think I've been thinking about it so operationally that it was like this epiphany when he said that, like, anything we can do to make our services more integrated, more intrusive, it's not just a good thing to do, it's a social justice imperative. So I just wanted to share that because I think when we talk about how to make our campuses more welcoming, there's so many levels, there's so many different things that we can do. And I really wanted to start by saying, like, this is making our campuses more welcoming is a systemic issue as well. I'll talk more about where it begins, but systemic oppression, systemic racism is systemic and requires a systemic solution. So that's that slide. Just a quick, who are our students? This is the FAST fact sheet from the American Association of Community Colleges from February of 2016. The little arrows, I've highlighted a couple of different data points that I wanted to share. You'll see there's 1,108 community colleges in the United States. The next arrow down on the left is information on demographics of students enrolled for credit. And you'll see the breakdown: 49% white, 22% Hispanic, 14% Black. Those are the top 3 ethnicities by percentage of students enrolled for credit. The third arrow down that I wanted to highlight were some other demographics around first gen, 36%, and then some others as well around single parents, non-US citizens, veterans, and students with disabilities. Then if you go over to the right arrow, again, I just wanted to point out that 36% of our students receive Pell Grants, and so would be considered low-income students. So that's just a little bit overall demographics. We have an increasingly diverse student population on many different accounts. So now, where does this movement begin and continue? With you. I started webinar today by talking about a need for systemic change and wanting to bring up the guided pathways movement, and really wanting to say that, with support and a redesign in how we deliver our services, all students are more successful, especially students who we have often coined as at risk, which I'm not comfortable using that term. It's like, I just recently looked up what's an alternative to calling someone at risk. I mean, I don't want to be called at risk. Do you? And I found at promise, which was an interesting, different term that we could potentially utilize. So where does this movement begin and continue with you? It does, it's important. Everyone is on a different path. Everyone has had their own individual life experience that brings them to where they're at this very moment. And both personal development and continued professional development are critical. And so I wanted to share, I'm going to share a lot of different resources today. The first, you'll see the screenshot on the slide. It's Project Implicit through Harvard University. And if you haven't done it, I would highly encourage you to try it. And you can take it, I think you can take it as many times as you wish. It's what's called an IAT. And actually right now I can't remember what that stands for, but it is, there are different tests that help you to better understand your biases. And so, when we think about personal development, understanding your experience and also being aware of your biases is a really powerful, important, and I would say professionally responsible step to take. Everyone has biases, and so the more aware that you are of them, the more able that you are to approach them, be aware of them in situations where you may be triggered, and move forward and have the opportunity to work on them. But it all begins with awareness. So can't recommend this tool enough. A couple other things I wanted to say about personal development. Sometimes things are going to be uncomfortable, and we are going to say things. So I can guarantee that you will have to pay taxes, and that you will say things in life that you wish you hadn't, or do things that you wish you hadn't. And that's how it is. And, I think in terms of personal development, knowing that you are not unique in screwing up sometimes, and being okay with that. Sometimes things get uncomfortable, especially when we're having difficult conversations that could be around our own bias or other topics. And the key is to when you make a mistake or you say something that you wish you hadn't, you can say, I'm sorry. You can learn about it. You can journal about it. You can talk to friends or colleagues, or even experts in the field of social justice work, to get some guidance. There's so many resources out there to continue to grow and learn. But again, it all really starts with you being willing to be, I think I'm going to use the word humble, not too small, not too big, right-sized, and ready to just grow and learn from when things go well, or when you maybe wish you had handled something differently. And the other thing that I hear people say a lot here at PCC that I really appreciate is just the line, I'm going to speak from my I. So, if you want to say something, if something that someone else says makes you uncomfortable, or if you have an opinion, saying I'm going to speak from my I here is a great way to frame that you're speaking from your experience and share what's on your mind too. So that's a little bit about personal development. Professional development, many of us have different groups on our campus, diversity groups, professional development related groups in the community as well. So those are things that you could learn more about or get more actively engaged in. I will say too, just showing up at different events on campus and activities related to different student groups or different staff and faculty groups, different events, activities, just being there, I think often is a great start if you haven't really been active in making your campus a more welcoming environment and building networks with people who are doing diversity and social justice work, and showing your support is a great way to get started or also add into what you're doing. Professional associations, there's just so many, and so I didn't list any. I mean, there's NASPA, ACPA, just to name two that are more student affairs focused. Then this one too. So there's so many. Read, you can read. There's so many good books. And I know here at our campus, we've actually had a book group. We've read some different books about social justice and worked as a group through different topics. That is a hyperlink there. I provided you with a reading list of different books that could be great that I found on the Social Justice Training Institute site. NCORE, if you haven't heard of NCORE, it's the National Conference on Race and Ethnicity, and they're very active, and they have a yearly conference. And it's actually coming right up in a couple of weeks this year, but it's something that you may want to think about attending if you haven't. It's an amazing, amazing experience, and there's just it's huge. There's so many student affairs professionals and students and other leaders there, and it's just an amazing opportunity to grow and learn more. And then the Social Justice Training Institute, which I referenced earlier regarding the reading list, that's more of an intensive opportunity. But if you have professional development dollars and really want to dig in and explore your own identity, your own biases, how to be more effective in the world and in your role, the Social Justice Training Institute, and again, that's linked there, is an amazing opportunity. I have heard so many professionals say that opportunity truly transformed their life and their professional life. So check that out. That is an experience that happens, I believe, twice a year, once in the summer and once in the winter around the holiday season. And then professional development wise, there's many online resources. I mentioned Kathy Aubert earlier. She's someone who has worked here with us at PCC to do some diversity workshops and intensives. And she actually has some online courses that you can take. She's been great, and we've learned a lot from her. Her and her partner also, her consulting partner also can run schools through the MCOD, which is a tool for multicultural organizational development. And so there's so many resources that she offers that could be helpful to you. And I do have her linked in the back in my resources area, so you could check her website out as well. And she's actually also a faculty at the Social Justice Training Institute. So moving right along, I wanted to share some different resources. I'm really proud of the resources that we offer here at Portland Community College. And I thought there's so many resources out there in the world to utilize. And, here at PCC, I think we have some really great ones. And so I thought I would highlight those there. The links are included in this training. And so you're able to access these right off our Portland Community College Office of Equity and Inclusion website. Portland Community College has adopted critical race theory as a decision-making tool here at the college. And you'll see here the five themes that form the basic perspectives of CRT. So you'll see them here: the centrality and intersectionality of race and racism, the challenge to dominant ideology, the commitment to social justice, the centrality of experiential knowledge, and the interdisciplinary perspective. So those five that's the CRT litmus test, if you will. And so those 5 points are points that we utilize when making decisions here at PCC. And it's something that you can do at work and in your life if you're making decisions to run them through this CRT perspective to ensure that we're making choices that really do foster that welcoming environment, supportive environment, social justice focused environment. Another tool, this has come up a lot in my practice lately, I wanted to share with you. It's called the Fist of Five voting method. And again, this is linked on our page as well for the Office of Equity and Inclusion. It's a way to ensure that voices are included in conversations that we're having, in decision-making conversations. So you'll see here, there's a diagram of hands in various positions, and the Fist of Five voting method, again, is around decision-making. So here it says, if you want to go out to Indian food, you ask everybody to raise their hand. Five fingers means this is the best decision ever. I'm all in. And the fist, closed fist, means no, I don't want to do this. And so with the Fist of Five voting method, what you do is you ask people to all raise their hand at the same time, indicating how many fingers. 4 is like, yeah, I'm in. 3 is like, I'm in. I have some reservations, but I'm in. 2 is like, I'm in, but I might have some concerns. And 1 is like, I really don't want to move on until we clear some things up. And then the closed fist is like, oh, no way. So not doing this. And so if you have a closed fist, 1, some 2s, it's time to stop and really ask people, like, what's going on? What's on your mind? This is a way to really ensure that there's consensus around decision making and that it's inclusive, and it allows for those with concerns to be able to express those. And so those with concerns can express them, and then you can re-vote. And at that point, if there are more hands than closed fists, then you can move on with the decision. But again, just a tool that I wanted to share in terms of how to make our meeting spaces a more welcoming, inclusive, and potentially more efficient places to make really inclusive decisions. Another tool that I wanted to share in terms of inclusive decision making are these inclusion cards. These actually aren't all of them. There's a deck. You get a deck of inclusion cards, and Kathy Aubert, who I mentioned, actually gave these to us at our diversity workshop here at PCC. It's a deck of cards that has different statuses, different identities, and what you do with these are you take them to meetings with you and carry them with you. And when you need to make a decision, or you have a policy or a procedure or some other project or programming that you're working on, you can utilize these cards. So you can lay them out, or systemically go through them, but really looking through all these different lenses as you're considering your decision or the particular project that you're working on is, in my opinion, a really powerful tool to ensure that you're doing your very best as a team to look at how different decisions can impact different groups potentially. For me, it's been a great tool to think about who else I need to include in a conversation that I hadn't thought to bring to the table. It's also a way to think about our programming and our services that we're offering, and just a really beneficial tool. So if you haven't seen those or heard of those, I would really highly encourage you to think about. You can even make your own. I would highly encourage you to think about adapting them for you and for your team. So I am nearing the end of my presentation today. I have here for you numerous resources. These online groups and resources are just a cornucopia, a potpourri, if you will, of different groups that you could think about becoming active in or learning more about. As I said, just a number of different resources, and I actually found these on the Social Justice Training Institute page, and I thought they looked really good. And then, yeah, see, but wait, there's more. Finally, wow, there really are a lot, you guys. Oh no, I guess that was actually these are resources that I used to form the webinar. Dr. Kathy O'Bear, her website, talked about her quite a bit throughout this presentation. PCC offers diversity definitions, and I wanted to share those. I thought that was a really great tool. It's a page that has different definitions. Often people say, well, what do we mean by social justice? What do we mean by race? What do we mean by ethnicity? And this is a really great tool to have available to provide people with basic diversity definitions. The PCC Office of Equity Inclusion, that's the tool that I shared, or the site that I talked about, where there's some great tools for operationalizing social justice practice in your work. The Project Implicit via Harvard University, starting with you, that's something I would highly recommend people to try. This link here is a social justice reading list, so that provides you different books that you could potentially check out. And then finally, the Social Justice Training Institute that I've referenced. So that we all have a role to play in making our campuses more welcoming. And, as I said at the beginning of the presentation, there are so many different directions that this conversation could go. I think probably the most critical word that emerges for me as I talk to you today is awareness. It's awareness of ourselves, awareness of people around us, awareness of who we are in the world and what we do and say how that can impact other people. And also awareness of the role that we play at our institutions and how we in our role can positively impact student success from the social justice lens. So I would encourage you to continue doing all the great work you're doing and continue with this growing awareness of who we are and how we can best be of service out there in the world. So with that, I will get rid of my screen share here so I can answer questions.
Thank you so much, Carrie. That was great. So just so everybody knows, the chat box is open, so please feel free to type in some questions. But to start out, Carrie, I wanted to ask you a question. So how would you suggest, like some communities, maybe in Portland, you have a lot of support within the community to work towards social justice, and maybe there's a stronger acknowledgement of some of what different identities actually do bring and dominant culture. But what do you suggest for communities that perhaps don't recognize their own privilege and thus don't see the problem? Mm-hmm. So how do you suggest, professionals engage with that challenge and push towards social justice and as the framework for creating welcoming campuses?
It's an awesome question. I can speak from my experience. I've been at PCC now for going on 3 years, but prior to being here, I've lived in a lot of predominantly white states and worked at predominantly white, even more predominantly white institutions than PCC, where for instance, I worked at a small private liberal arts school in Vermont, and there was, we struggled there in a state like Vermont. I mean, great state, great people, but so I'm not trying to speak disparagingly, but what I want to say is that, when it's all, when there's not a lot of awareness about white privilege and about how white privilege might have an impact on other people, the need to have that conversation, like people don't express, oh, we should talk about white privilege because it's all white people. And so I've been in that position before, both in Vermont, South Dakota, New Hampshire, working in predominantly white states, at predominantly white institutions. And some things that I have found helpful are, Campus Compact is an awesome resource. Actually, when I worked at my small school in Vermont, I worked closely with Campus Compact and got a grant for what we call deliberative dialogue, which was a program where we actually had programming to have deliberate dialogues around white privilege, around different challenges, and talk openly and honestly with a facilitator around, like, how are we more welcoming? What are our biases? Maybe not everybody's going to run out and get a Campus Compact grant as a response to your question. But I guess, the other piece is to find like-minded people to start to have the conversation. Sometimes, and I will own that I do this around a lot of different things, actually. Sometimes it's easy to say, wow, that's a problem, and then walk right by it. Whoa, that sucks, and then just keep walking. And it's like, if you're in a small town, if you're in a more rural institution, if you can have that courageous conversation with different people and kind of build capacity to do different things, read a book, have a conversation, some of the things that I mentioned, I think it really starts with having those conversations and creating some action. But if it's related to student success and it's related to student access, that's an imperative. So, this is not, and I think that's what I was really trying to say when I was talking about what happened at AACC around the guided pathways. It's like, I've always known that this is an imperative, but when something happened, the stars aligned, and when the president of Miami-Dade said, this is student access and success is a social justice issue, it's like, yeah, we have to be having these conversations, even if it's just us having them or it's just us and a couple other people. But if you frame it around student success, it's like that, it's got to be framed around that, in my opinion. Sharice, I don't know if that answered your question. Got a little long-winded there.
No, I think that was really good. It's definitely something we've been working towards at LPCC, and it's a continual question. How do you reach out to the folks and to the population that really doesn't acknowledge white privilege? So it seems to be a trend. Yeah. If anybody else has any questions, please type it in for us. Otherwise,
I had a question, Carrie.
Yes.
You said that when you used to say at risk, you said you called it at something else. So what was this something else? I wanted to capture that.
Yeah, it was at promise.
I love it.
I saw that it was in the Washington Post. I was in a meeting a couple of weeks ago where somebody pushed back on a vendor that we were meeting with, and the vendor who we were meeting with, was saying, like, here's a tool that can help you identify at-risk students, and someone in the meeting pushed back and said, I don't like that. Like, don't call them at risk. And I thought, yeah, I don't either. What can we do? I mean, words matter, and, as I said, who wants to be called at risk? So I just Googled, like, what's a different way to say at risk? And yeah, I guess there's this entire school district that's adopted that as part of their vocabulary and how they talk about students.
I love it.
Hey, Charisse, I was just thinking back to your question. How do you get people who don't know they have white privilege to think about white privilege and talk about it? And I feel like that I wanted to kind of dive into that a little bit deeper, maybe for a minute. I mean, the people who don't know they have white privilege or don't think about it might not be the ones who show up to those deliberative dialogues. And so, something that occurs to me that's been a thread throughout my presentation today is how colleges are about, especially at community colleges, so many of our students go to class and then they go home or to work or wherever they might go. And so, when I started thinking about your question a little bit more, it occurred to me, how can we work with faculty to have this conversation in the classroom more? I can think last night, just for the heck of it, I was looking at PCC's core outcomes for what we expect of our students. And, being a global citizen and someone who's open to different viewpoints and perspectives is part of our core competencies for our students and our graduates that we expect. And so I can't help but wonder if others take a look at their college core competencies and university core competencies I expect you might find something similar. And, to that end, that might be a conversation that's worth having with instructional leaders to talk about, how do we weave this critical topic into the academic work that we're doing. This is not just a student services topic. Social justice and student success is not just for the multicultural centers to figure out. And I think that, having those kinds of conversations could be really fruitful, interesting, and really look systemically at how to affect change.
Thank you.
I think what I like about your presentation too is that it's not a one time and you're done. I think it just really shows the level of commitment an institution has to have for the student experience and for inclusivity to really dive into this type of work, and that it's something that is not something you're going to do in one day or in one day training. It requires commitment, and I think that's something really important for any institution looking to make that change. Is are you going to make that commitment and then bring people on board to help make that shift? So I thought that was really it's important. And I think people kind of need to look big picture what you're getting into if that's something that you're going to do. But it's important work.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times it's almost like, how can you not do? But people have to make decisions, I suppose. But
mm-hmm. Yeah.
I also like how you kind of said, it's everybody's work. Like, it's not just, I feel like I've been in conversations or heard kind of that's that person's job. Whereas welcoming campuses, social justice, the work, diversity work is really, that's everybody's. We all make up that social fabric of the institution. And it's so important that everybody kind of gets empowered and involved. So thank you.
I think it's a practice too. They call, people spiritual people, people who are spiritual. I'm one of them. I'm spiritual myself, but they call it a spiritual practice. And I remember one day I'm like, why am I not more spiritual? Which is kind of antithetical to being spiritual, right? And I was like, why am I not more spiritual? How I suck at being spiritual, and it's like, then all of a sudden I realized, like, they call it a spiritual practice, like you don't graduate from being spiritual. Like it's something that you practice and you work on that, whatever work means or looks like to you, but you continue to nurture that and foster that. And I feel that at least for me, this is very much the same. It's like, social justice is a imperative and it's a critical issue. The work starts within you and it's a practice. Like you start where you're at and you continue to grow and challenge yourself if you're aware of your biases and, and if you have people you trust who you can talk to offline outside of work, so you can, have some conversations and continue to grow. Cause it's like, it's this interesting dichotomy, right? It's like, it's systemic. There's systemic racism that has to be, dealt with, approached for student success. And it starts with this hard work within as well.
Well, thank you so much, Carrie. I think you did a great webinar. I'm so glad that we can share this with people because it's going to be on our YouTube channel. So thank you all for coming. Stay tuned. We'll share our next webinar with you soon. All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.